The moment she said it, the world didn't just go silent. It collapsed inward like a dying star. We were standing in the kitchen at 2:13 a.m., the same kitchen where I had shared 1,000 careless laughs with her brother, where we had celebrated exam results, watched late-night matches, and argued over whose turn it was to do the dishes. But that night, everything was different. Her voice was trembling, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. And then she whispered those words, "Can we try?" And my entire past came rushing back with a force I wasn't ready to survive. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that love sometimes grows from the most unexpected places, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what it truly means to feel human. I replied without thinking, because sometimes the truth lives in the places fear cannot reach. Love always starts from somewhere, but ours had started in the worst place imaginable. I had known her since she was 13, a quiet presence who used to sit on the stairs while her brother and I played video games, pretending she wasn't watching us laugh until our stomachs hurt. Back then, she was just my best friend's younger sister, the kid who brought us tea without being asked, who remembered my favorite snacks, who never interrupted but somehow always understood. I never noticed when she grew up. Or maybe I did, but I chose not to acknowledge it because some lines are never meant to blur. Life was simple then until it wasn't. 3 years ago, her brother, my best friend, the closest thing I had to family, died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday evening. One moment he was sending me memes, and the next I was identifying his body in a hospital that smelled like antiseptic and grief. It shattered something inside me that I never managed to put back together again. I stopped visiting their house after that, because every corner held a memory of him, and every memory felt like betrayal. I couldn't stand the way his mother looked at me with silent questions, or the way his room stayed untouched like a shrine to a life that had ended too soon. And her, I avoided her most of all, because in her eyes, I saw the same storm that lived inside me. Months passed, then a year, then another. I buried myself in work, in noise, in anything that could keep me from thinking. But grief has a way of leaking through the cracks, and no matter how far I ran, I always found myself back at that night. The rain, the phone call, the silence that followed. Until one evening when I ran into her at a bookstore. She wasn't the same girl who used to sit quietly on the stairs. She had grown into someone stronger, someone who carried her pain with quiet dignity. But the sadness was still there, tucked into the corners of her smile. We exchanged awkward greetings that felt heavier than they should have been, like strangers trying to remember a shared language. And then she said something that changed everything. She told me she didn't blame me. I hadn't realized until that moment how much guilt I had been carrying. Guilt for not insisting he stay home that night, for not calling him again when he didn't answer, for surviving when he didn't. Her forgiveness wasn't loud or dramatic. It was soft, almost fragile. But it was enough to crack open the walls I had built around myself. We started meeting occasionally after that. Coffee at first, then long walks where we talked about him, about the memories we had both been too afraid to revisit. She laughed at stories I thought would only make her cry, and she cried at moments I had always remembered as funny. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal, not separately but together. But healing is messy. There were nights when the silence between us felt too intimate, too charged with something neither of us was ready to name. Nights when her hand brushed against mine and lingered just a second too long. Nights when I caught myself wondering what it would feel like to hold her, and immediately hated myself for even thinking it. She was my best friend's sister. She was off limits. She was a reminder of everything I had lost. And yet, she was also the only person who understood. The first time I realized I was in trouble was when she got sick and I found myself sitting beside her hospital bed, terrified in a way I hadn't been since the night her brother died. Watching her sleep, pale and fragile under fluorescent lights, I understood something I had been trying to deny for months. Losing her would break me all over again. I left before she woke up that day, because fear is easier than confession. After that, I tried to create distance. I canceled plans, ignored messages, told myself it was for the best. For her, for her family, for the memory of the friend who had trusted me with everything. But the absence only made things worse. Every day without her felt heavier than the last, like I was drowning in a silence that refused to let me breathe. Which brings us back to that kitchen at 2:13 a.m. She had shown up unannounced, her eyes red from crying, her voice shaking as she told me she couldn't pretend anymore, that she was tired of being strong, tired of losing people, tired of wondering what might have been if she had just been brave enough to ask. And then she did. She asked if we could try, if we could take all the broken pieces of our shared past and build something new from them. My first instinct was to say no, to protect her from the whispers, from the judgment, from the possibility that loving me might feel like betraying him. But when I looked at her, I realized something that changed everything. We weren't replacing him. We were surviving him. Love didn't erase grief. It grew around it like flowers pushing through cracked concrete. So I told her that love always starts from somewhere. Sometimes from friendship, sometimes from loss, sometimes from the quiet understanding that comes from standing in the same storm and choosing not to let go of each other. It wasn't easy after that. Her mother didn't speak to me for weeks when she found out. Old friends questioned our motives. Some called it inappropriate, others called it desperate. There were days when I wondered if they were right, if we were just two broken people clinging to each other because we didn't know how to stand alone. But then there were mornings when she smiled at me over coffee, and I saw hope instead of pain. Evenings when we visited his grave together, not as mourners trapped in the past, but as survivors learning how to live with it. We spoke about him often, not as a barrier between us, but as a bridge that had brought us together in ways neither of us had expected. And slowly the guilt began to fade. If you've made it this far and this story has reminded you of someone you lost, or someone who helped you heal when you thought you never would, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart. Because sometimes, love doesn't arrive in perfect timing. Sometimes, it shows up in the middle of grief, disguised as friendship, asking quietly if it's allowed to stay. Just before we end, I have a special request for you. Comment the word somewhere if you believe that every love story has a beginning, even the ones born from pain. We still miss him. I don't think that will ever change. But now, when it rains on a Tuesday evening, it doesn't feel like the end of the world anymore. It feels like a reminder that even storms pass, and when they do, they leave behind a sky wide enough for new beginnings. Because love always starts from somewhere.